Hello, this is Ed Pollack, and I'm happy to join you for Cyber Back to School. This is going to be a fun, fast-paced session all about the basics of data security from a modern perspective as we look over time at how things have changed, where we are now, and where things are going in the future, and what we can do to take control of our security. So with that, let's get right to it. This is me. I'm a Microsoft Data Platform MVP, and I do a whole lot in the data space. I write, I speak, I organize events, and I have a lot of fun with all of this. Frustration? Sure. Fun as well. Feel free to look me up online, connect with me later. Our agenda is straightforward today. We're going to really talk about where security's been and where it's going, and the real basics of it today. What do you need to know in order to begin to have a strategy to conquer security in any platform at all? And then tactics and best practices, and then we're wrapping it up. There's no QA today, but I put that there on purpose because you can find me later and ask questions. Look me up online, connect with me, ask whatever questions you want, advice, and I'd be happy to share. So I like to look at this as one of three things. There are really three things that I love to call the trifecta of forgotten things, and these are ideals that get forgotten in the world of software because we simply get busy. Things that I look at as important, but left aside. The first is performance. That is, how well do things perform? And very often we forget about it because things are great. They work in dev, the data is small, and then we worry about it later. High availability disaster recovery, big one. We don't think about outages and downtime and RPO and RTO very often until it's too late, or if we have some foresight and think ahead. And security, again, one of those things where until you have a breach or until somebody really knocks some sense into you, it's very easy to forget about security and not take it as seriously as maybe you should. So I call it the trifecta of forgotten things. It's meant to bring light to the fact that we very often cast things aside that we probably shouldn't. And today we're going to talk all about security. So let's go back in time a bit. Let's talk about the 80s, the 90s, the yesteryears before now, what things used to be like. So here's what it used to be like. I'd have my data. There's our little database right there. Maybe it's in the cloud, maybe it's not. Back in the day, it wasn't in the cloud. You had a database, and you would build a wall around it. And when you built the wall around it, you were confident and happy, and life was good. If you weren't 100% confident, though, you might add a little more, like maybe some padlocks and some other various ways to secure it some more, maybe a big vault lock or a security guard in front of it. Metaphorical, of course, but ultimately you're just building lots of walls around your data to keep people from getting in. That's how it used to be, and it's not very realistic anymore. Today, data is a lot more like this. Security is much more like this. We want to put walls around our data, but systems are too big and complex. And so what it ends up really being like is Swiss cheese. And if we allow our Swiss cheese to have enough holes in it, it's very, very easy for intruders to get in and for people to cause trouble. What's changed between then and now? Why is it we used to be able to build a wall and be happy, and today we can't do that anymore? And there's many, many answers to that question. This is only some of them. One of the biggest is that our data is growing very, very fast. It's growing horizontally. That is, we have more databases, more data stores, more platforms to store our data in, more clouds to store it in. Our data is getting bigger vertically. That is, we have more gigabytes, terabytes, petabytes, exabytes. There's simply more and more of it that people need access to. Because it's distributed, it's not just spread out in more databases, it's in more data centers and more clouds and more countries and more cities and more places all over. Therefore, more places to get in, right? Vendor software is big. We don't think about it much, but every piece of software that we use with our data, somehow, even with open source, closed source, doesn't matter where it comes from, is a vector for attack potentially. If we don't update it, if we don't maintain it, it could be a problem. The people that make those tools, good at what they do or not? I don't know. Today everybody has internet access. Everyone has it. It's cheap. It's everywhere. It's fast. It's taken for granted. That didn't used to be the case. We don't just have data that's scaled vertically and horizontally. We also have data that is used for many different purposes. We have our transactional app data that can then get transformed and stored in many, many places for analytics, machine learning, AI, and so on and so forth. So we might have the same data copied many times in many places, each of them with their own security and their own credentials and their own ways to get broken into. On top of that, software is more complex than ever. Software development is faster than ever, and therefore we have a challenge. How do we get past that complexity? How do we secure when everything is more complicated all around us all the time? And for better or for worse, people use crypto as a way to access us. They try to get you to trick you, get into your systems, encrypt things, and then ask for crypto, and it works way too often. So the fact that criminals have access to that is just another way for them to take advantage and fund bad things. So a lot has changed over the years, and it looks very different now from when I was far younger. So with all that, where do we begin? And the easiest answer to that is an inventory. We need to know, what do we have? And it's always shocking to me how many organizations have trouble with this. What do you have? Where does it live? Who has access to it? Is it important or not? Is it PII or not? Those are all questions that not every organization answers, and not everyone has an answer to. How many servers do you have out there? Not sure. How many systems? How many licenses? Let me check and get back to you in a week. That happens a lot more than you'd think. So audit. And by audit, I mean you go in, find the right people, and answer the questions of, what data do you have? What platforms is it on? What software do you rely on? What versions are things? What kind of logging do you have in place? What sort of hardware and firmware are there, if that's relevant to the systems you're using? Who has permissions, logins, users, credentials, certificates, all that kind of stuff. Take account of all of this, and you shouldn't do it all by hand. Once you've begun looking into this, automate it. Build scripts, build processes that gather all this data for you, because you don't want to do it by hand. Nobody, especially if you have hundreds, thousands, millions of servers, you don't want to deal with this manually. So don't at all. You cannot have great security without knowing what you have. So this is like step one before you do anything else. You can advance along security once you have some of this information, but ultimately you need all of it. And if you don't know everything, talk to people who do. I talked about Swiss cheese earlier, and Swiss cheese sounds like a very insecure thing and hard to secure. The reality, though, is that the best way to look at security today and how it's changed is you can't put the wall up and secure your data behind a big, giant brick wall, but we look at it more like an onion. The reality is that your security needs to have layers. Each layer is something that can stop people or slow them down enough that it matters. And if you have lots of layers, like an onion, then you can have better security. If there's many layers to keep people out, then the odds of them getting into your data are far less, and the odds of you catching them or finding the vulnerability or seeing a log somewhere showing a problem is far higher. So layers are key. You can't rely on any one layer for security. You need many of them, and many layers provide kind of a collective security that ensures your data is far less likely to be touched by the wrong people. This is a key that's also kind of forgotten, kind of in the HADR world of being forgotten, is backups. Backups are key to everything. If you want security, you must have backups, and that depends on your systems and where your data is stored. But if relevant, you need server backups, you need database backups, you may need snapshots, you may need backups of other things as well. Whatever you have, data, servers, systems, have backups. And don't just have backups, test them, test the restores. Can you get data back quickly? What's your RPO and your RTO? Do you know? If we had an outage or lost a system, how much data would get lost? That's your RPO, recovery point objective. How about RTO, recovery time objective? How long would it take to get back in? Those are really important things. And you can tell when there's been a system that has gone down in a terrible way because they're down for days and days. And that means either they didn't have backups or their backups might have gotten compromised. So know that you have backups, test them, restore them routinely. Who has access to them? Somebody can steal your backups? That's no better than having your data stolen. So make sure you have safe, secure, and well-tested backups. Otherwise, if things go wrong, you may have nothing to go back to, and that could be the end. Like the end. Companies have ended because of this, so you don't want that. On top of backups, you need logs. Logs are critical. Log everything. Log your database servers, all your tasks, your processes, your agents, your servers, your hosts, everything, your apps. Log everything. You don't have to keep the data forever. You can decide how long to keep it for. That's retention, and it's totally up to you. But keep it. Keep it for long enough that you understand what's going on, have queries that go off of that, alerts, monitors, whatever you need. But these logs are critical. It's very hard to detect bad things if you don't have logs. So have logs. Make sure they're relevant. Make sure they alert. You monitor off them. You deal with them. Maintain them. Whatever you're going to do. But have them for every system. And because you don't have to keep them forever, they don't have to get too big or expensive. but you do need these, and somebody has to look at them, or a system has to look at them and process. Otherwise, you have no idea what's going on. People could be in your data right now, and it's happened. Number of big companies where people have been in their data for months and they didn't know is disturbing, shocking, sad, many other words like that. We often love to see movies and TV, and we think of this, right? We see the picture of the person with the hoodie on behind a keyboard in the dark. Why you wear sunglasses in the dark, I don't know, but people always do that. But this isn't really what hacking is anymore. We think of hacking as this because it looks pretty cool, right? But this isn't really what it is anymore. More often than not, hacking's kind of like this. Somebody texts one of your employees at your company, convinces them they're your boss, click on this link, they need a password, something's going on, and then through a few clicks and a few mistakes, they're in your systems. This is what hacking is really, really like, and it's a big deal because this means that your biggest threat isn't the hacker behind the keyboard with years of crazy experience doing horrible things. The weakest link is you, me, people, humans, because all it takes is one click, one wrong response, one oops, I didn't realize that, and you, your organization, your data are at risk or compromised. So this is really important to remember. The weakest link today is not your routers, your firewalls, things like that. It's probably people, and the click rate on spam and things like that is pretty high. So again, Swiss cheese, onion, that's what we're looking at here, not a wall, because we're all weak links, and people click on things, and it can't be stopped completely. So the first way to deal with this, the first principle we need to get past this, to begin to have a way to effectively safeguard our data, is the principle of least privilege. This is the idea that people should only have access to what they need to do their jobs and nothing more. Not just people, but apps as well, systems, vendor software, everything. Anything that accesses data should access it with only what it needs and nothing more. If you're an administrator who has to administer a system, you might have a lot of access. If you're a support person who has to go in and occasionally look at data, you should have read-only access to the things you need and nothing more. If you are a system that runs backups, you should have backup access and nothing more. This is huge because it really, really reduces the attack surface area. It means that if somebody compromises a support person, a salesperson, an IT person, an executive, whatever, that their access to your systems is limited by what they should be getting to, and therefore the access of somebody who compromised them is also limited, and that's big. If the person's account is compromised and they don't have a lot of access, then you've not lost your whole system. You may have lost something, but maybe not everything, maybe not a lot. Always avoid, once you have people having access to only what they need, which means also, by the way, no DB owners, no sysadmins, no SAs, no roots, avoid using those accounts. They're dangerous, they're very well known, everybody's going to try the admin login. Don't do it. Once you have your logins locked down, you're not using silly ones, and people have access to what they need, make sure the passwords are crazy, and you don't have to change them all the time anymore. Common guidance now is have long passwords, 25, 30 characters or more, things that are easy to remember, but hard to crack because they're big. 50 characters is great. But don't make people change them all the time. I promise they'll just begin cycling through the same passwords over and over. They'll do Pokemon 1, Pokemon 2, Pokemon 3, and you're messed up. And they'll find some other way to hack around that. So making people change passwords constantly is not really much of a useful guidance anymore because people always work around that and do bad things. If you have integrated authentication through an operating system or through a cloud vendor, use the integrated auth. It's more secure, harder to hack, and you need to be inside in order to get to it. Again, the goal of all of this is to ensure that people can't access data they're not supposed to, and if something goes wrong, you haven't given away the keys to the entire castle. This also means that we should have separate roles. So not only should we each have access to what we need, but we shouldn't share logins. And this is a big deal. It's so easy when we're in a hurry to just say, here, use my login. Here, use SA. Hey, use this one. But that's not good. You can have the same login for 5 apps. Don't do that. Every app should get a different login and user. Every person should get a different login and user. This is really important because this means if I leave the company or you leave or somebody leaves or whatever happens, somebody gets fired, I don't know, you just disable the login, you're done. If they're a part of a group, then you can disable them and then the group doesn't have them in it anymore. You can remove them from the group. This is really easy. There are lots of other ways out there, such as database schemas to separate roles, things like that. You can use roles and credentials, domain groups, whatever makes the most sense. There's lots of ways to subdivide security, but the real key to all of this is to ensure that there's a division of roles and that you're not overlapping and reusing and making it so that a lot of people have access. Because the more people access something, the more likely for any one of them to get compromised, and then suddenly everyone's compromised. So that's a key point, is that we should only have access to what we need, and then we shouldn't share that with other people. It's not worth it. You should never do it. Nobody should be asking for passwords or logins that are yours, ever. Here's an example of how a principle of least privilege can be used. Classic example, the Intel x86 processor, shows how you put the kernel in the middle, and you surround it with layers on the outside. And each layer is an additional way to access data, but you can't work your way in from outside. So applications can only access device drivers that access the kernel. And having layers like this ensures that getting all the way to the middle is very hard. For a hacker to go from the outside to the kernel is difficult, and that is intentional. It's just a nice example of onion security and the idea that layers allow you to have better security. But despite everything I've talked about so far, which a lot of it we've heard about before, principle of least privilege and so on and so forth, we've heard about all this before, and yet despite that, why are breaches so common? Why has this happened so much? Why is it when you turn on the news or read the paper, there's just so much out there, all over the internet, about the constant, never-ending flow of breaches? And the reality is, software development is complicated, and we're busy, and it's very easy to put security second or third or fourth, especially when things haven't gone wrong before. Right? You have insurance on a house and nothing ever happens, and you get complacent and you say, man, I don't know if I need insurance anymore. And then something happens. It's not much different than that. Security is like insurance against your data, and if you don't take it seriously, eventually something will go wrong. Guaranteed. Very, very common startups and small companies. Because they're small, they don't cover security, they don't have time, they don't have money, they don't have people, they don't put the focus on it. Bad stuff happens. I've heard the phrase, no one will ever do that, more times than I can count, and the reality is people will do that eventually. With enough time and enough resource, enough opportunity, it will happen. A lot of security is considered inconvenience, and that's a real problem that we have. More passwords, two-factor authentication, more ways to secure systems, more ways to get in, more gates to get through. Each of those layers of security is to some extent an inconvenience to people, and because of that, people complain. I don't want to have to go change my password. I don't want a 50-character password. I don't want to have to use 2FA. I don't have time for that. Can you just give me a new password? Please, quickly, just help me out. Can I just use this instead? Can you give me People make excuses, and those excuses get us in trouble. And it's not just us. Vendors are too. All the software that you use is written by other people, and those people aren't always going to do what's best. Because every single layer of security we can put on is going to make people's lives a little more annoying. And we can make things as simple as possible. That is a reality, right? If I didn't have windows and doors in my house, I can go in and out really fast, right? It might get a little cold. People could probably come in and take whatever they want. But boy, it'll be fast. And it's not much different than that. So breaches are common for a lot of reasons, and a lot of them have to really revolve around complacency, laziness, convenience, a lot of human things that are very easy to overlook. I love talking about vendor software because vendor software is special because it's not your software. I build software, you build software, we all build software, but then we use tools, right? We use our development tools, we use our monitoring tools, our platform tools for data, for the cloud, for AI, for analytics. We have software tools. We have the operating system, right? We have our operating system and all the software that goes into that, all the platforms we develop on. Our organizations have software separate from all of that. How do we manage workflows and human resources and people and paychecks and so on? So how about training? If you count it up in any medium-sized organization, they have dozens and dozens of products they use. In the larger organization, the more vendor software they use. And each one of those pieces of software, in theory, is a way you can get attacked. Data can get stolen. And so each of those has to be secured just like everything else, especially if it has access to your data. That's critical. If it's not cloud-based software that's managed for you, then you have to manage it and update it and maintain it. There's a lot of this out there, and we take it all for granted, but these things get hacked too. And when they do, your data is there, right? And so it's up to you to lock it down. Ensure that every vendor app, the security within it, is configured in a way that makes you happy. People don't have access to more than they should. That's very important. If a product's insecure, or it's had breaches in the past, or you're a little leery of it, don't use it. You don't have to. There's alternatives everywhere for every piece of software to do everything. Use the right piece of software. And if it's insecure and you're stuck with it, isolate it. Put it off on its own. Make sure that it can't cause trouble. Another key is just don't give away your data. Where a lot of us are relying on co-pilots and agents and all sorts of tools to help us navigate through our work using AI, and that's great. But by default, they'll take your data and they might send it back to their companies, and you may not want that. They may send it off to the internet. They may send it somewhere. And so it's really important that whatever tools you use, you understand how they use your data, whether it's AI related or not. How do they use your data? What metrics do they collect on you, and is that okay? Is what they collect okay or not okay? And if it's not okay, don't use it. And if you don't need something, don't keep it. It amazes me how often I will look at a server and I'll find software on it that no one needs. They'll have reporting software, analytics software, Windows components, Linux components, just tons of stuff sitting there that isn't actually needed. It was installed either by default or someone put it in at some point and then it just sat there. If you don't need it, get rid of it. The less you have installed, the less risk there is. Again, it comes back to how is your data going to be used? And this is more than just who has access to it outside of your organization, like are you giving your data over to a company by accident, but who in your organization has access to it? Can the people who access your application see things they shouldn't? If an AI tool, if an agent is hooked up to your data, can it bypass encryption or other security to look at your data and give it to people who shouldn't see it? So it's really important to make sure whatever tools you attach to your data, access it, consume it, and give it out to only the people that should see it and nobody else. If you train your data, make sure that training is on the right data, not the wrong data. If other tools train on your data, make sure that's okay as well. You don't want your data, personal, private, identifiable data being used for training if it shouldn't be. And if AI tools create brand new data from your data, some derived data, what happens to that? What are the permissions on that? Are they the same? Are they different? Does it have permissions? Just make sure that if new data is created, that it's handled in a way that you think is appropriate. And if it's not, fix it while you still can before you give away things you don't want to give away. This is one of the biggest keys. It's one of the most boring things on the planet, patching, right? Nothing's more exciting than patching. And if everything's cloud-based, you have everything as platform as a service, software as a service, then you don't have to patch a whole lot. But you probably still do. You probably have servers, VMs, containers. You probably have things somewhere. If nothing, you have development tools you use and software that you develop with and work with. So it's very hard to get past this no matter what you do. Is it possible in environments where you don't need to patch at all? Maybe, but it's still not that likely. Therefore, any software that you're responsible for that you maintain, make sure it's patched regularly. Have a schedule, monthly, quarterly, whatever makes sense to you, do it. If you can automate it, automate it. If you can't automate it, have a reliable schedule. If anything crazy happens, 0 days, security hacks, problems that are, need to be resolved immediately, prioritize them and do them as soon as possible. You don't have to wait 3 months to patch a 0-day security vulnerability because it's on your schedule. 0-day things are scary. They should get patched quickly. They usually aren't that big of a deal. If you have legacy software, old software that can't be patched anymore for whatever reason, isolate it. Add extra security to it. Have a timeline to get rid of it. Do whatever you can to make sure it's off to the side and can't pollute the rest of your environment if there's a problem. Because the longer software gets stale and unpatched, the more of a risk it poses. For who knows what reasons or why, but eventually people find problems with it. And if they don't get patched, that's your problem, even if it's not your software. So make sure you either patch it, maintain it, take good care of it, isolate it, and then ideally get rid of it if you can't manage it. Then on top of all that, we have the law. Every state, every region, every province, every country has their own laws on how data should be handled. Do you know about those laws? If you have somebody else's data under your care, how are you supposed to handle it? What if it's PII, or medical data, or government data, or police data, or security data? What do you have to do with it? What do your contracts with your customers say you have to do with them? So therefore, you have a lot of details. If you have data for people in other countries, you're going to almost definitely have to follow their laws in addition to yours as well. So therefore, this is important. Large organizations will have people whose entire responsibility is to manage this. They'll have chief, strategy officers, data officers, information security officers. If you don't have those, think about these things a little bit and make sure that you're not violating any laws or contracts in what you do. And if nothing, if somebody asks you for something and you realize it's breaking a deal or a contract or a law, just push back and say, no, I can't do that, get permission, thank you, bye. It's that simple. But keep in mind that there's a lot of laws out there, and they get more complicated with time because breaches keep happening, and countries and organizations and companies are tired of getting hacked. Of course, Dev and QA are one of those places where things get overlooked because they're development, right? We test, we play around, we just do whatever we need to do, right? Everyone has administrative privileges, they have access to the data, and we get things done, right? But it's a little dangerous because development environments are often connected to other environments, production environments, analytic environments, and so on. And the data there may be copies of data from production environments. It happens more often than we want to think, right? We say we're going to scramble our data, make it all safe and anonymized, but it gets there. And on top of that, your code is in there too. Database code is code. It's proprietary. It's important. You probably don't want to give it all away to the world. So Dev and QA have to be secure as well, and that's something to think about. And remember, the Wild West is fun, but it's not really ideal for dev, and it gets overlooked so much. And the number of breaches that have occurred in companies because dev and QA environments were compromised, and then that led to production environments and production data is staggering. So any other environments you have out there besides production, dev, QA, test, performance testing, whatever, make sure they're secure as well, and that people can't get to data they shouldn't be able to get to. If you can't get into it in production for a good reason, you shouldn't be able to get to it in dev without good reason as well. And kind of a fun thing, too, that goes back to our triad of forgotten things is performance. We very often think of performance as kind of its own world. Things perform well, we're happy. But in many ways, performance and security are interlinked. And it's very easy to make mistakes in code that can lead to both performance and security problems at the same time. Very often, they intertwine. For example, let's say you allow people to search in text boxes for names. And there's the ability to accidentally put in wildcards and search for as much as you want. If I can put information in, hit enter, and the result is the database returns 10 million rows or a billion rows, that's dangerous. It's possible I can get data back I shouldn't. It's also possible that the performance impact will be so high that I'm inadvertently DDoSing the app or the database, just crashing things and crushing it. So be very careful whenever you have free-form text input anywhere in an app. Be careful to make sure that you can't put in things you're not supposed to, and if you do, it filters it out and cleanses it appropriately. If possible, cleanse inputs that are random inputs, user-generated input, cleanse it on multiple levels. Have the app cleanse it, have the database cleanse it, ensure that on multiple levels, bad things can't get through. Watch out for wildcards, blanks, nulls. Watch out for SQL injection, the use of quotes and apostrophes and brackets and trying to insert code in. All those things are dangerous, and it's very, very easy to find them when you have forms that can be filled out. So just be cautious about those things because performance is security. If you see things that are performing badly, consider they may also have a security impact as well. They could be an indicator of code problems, security problems, or just something else going on that you probably care about a lot. That leads, of course, to managing our inputs. We have inputs come from many places, and if you have drop-downs and radio buttons and things like that as inputs, it's pretty easy, right? You pick what you need, you continue, and life is good. Free-form user-generated data is the biggest threat for security. When I can type in whatever I want, that is the biggest risk possible in an application for me to find a way to cause trouble. Therefore, if you have to have it, cool, have it, but try not to. If you don't need it, have lookup tables, have drop-downs, have ways to integrate into the app. This happens a lot with addresses. Many systems now, instead of letting you enter an address yourself, will let you enter something and then suggest an address, and then you pick the suggested address, and then it continues. And by doing that, they get a known quantity, and they also avoid any possibility for input abuse because you're not being allowed to put your own text into their database. And then whatever does have to get freeform entered, validate, 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 and not just in the application, but if that data gets used downstream, if it gets copied into places, if it ends up in data lakes or data warehouses, or for use in training AI models and so on and so forth, make sure that it gets validated and sanitized there as well if needed. Validation is something that should happen everywhere, not just when I first enter it, but everywhere. Things can go wrong when data gets copied from environment to environment, so continue to sanitize and validate everywhere. And if you have nulls or blanks or other unusual input, make sure they get handled correctly. Null isn't a value. Null isn't like 5 or 0 or blank or 1, 1, 1900. Null is null. So make sure it's handled correctly. Make sure you know how anti-nulls works. Check for null separately, and don't allow it to be used in a way that could possibly compromise your database or your app. And the result of having user-generated input and things like that can be error messages that happen when unexpected things are entered. Any error message your app returns to people, no matter what it is, has to be app-generated. I can't get SQL exceptions, or app exceptions, or code exceptions, or things from the web server, and so on and so forth. Those kinds of errors are dangerous because they tell the user they've interacted directly with your system in a way that wasn't intended. Therefore, any application, any exception, should be thrown by your app in a friendly fashion. That way you don't inadvertently expose internal details of your system, or tell hackers, hey, you found a way in, keep going, try again, try again, try. Don't help them. That's really what you're going to do here. These are kind of examples of any application throwing out fun error messages. Funny, whatever they are, doesn't matter, but these came from an app though, and because of that, they tell you what the app wants to tell you. They don't give you any information about their backend, their database, their web, whatever, their app, no code, none of that. This is dangerous though. When people see this, when people see a SQL exception, that implies SQL injection. That implies that something they entered got straight to their database, and their database went straight back to you, and that's dangerous. Anybody with any knowledge of hacking will take this and run with it and keep trying to enter interesting things to see what happens. And if you don't catch this, they will. So be cautious and make sure that any error returned to any user anywhere is generated by you, an application, not by your database or internal systems or software, things like that. And again, I mentioned this earlier when it came to servers and features and things like that. If something's not used, uninstall it. Not only does it remove that as a security vector that somebody can attack, but as a bonus, you're saving resources. You're saving space in terms of just storage, backups, memory, all those things. The more things you get rid of, the more resources you save. And that's good. There's no downside to this. This is especially important on servers or places where your software is being hosted, but it's also important on user machines as well, employees, people you work with, because if they have things that are old and outdated and hackable, they can get compromised. So this is something that needs to be controlled everywhere, not just in your app itself, but everywhere. This is something that's often overlooked. Who has time for it, right? Code review. But it's important. But it works both ways. Code review is really important. It's a way for us to have human beings check code, look at it, and validate. Is there anything important I'm missing? Should there be questions getting asked that aren't getting asked? Did I make a goof? Did I make something that's going to perform poorly? So on and so forth. It's necessary. It's part of security, though. It's a layer of security. It's not a replacement, though. You can't simply say, oh, we code reviewed, therefore it's great. That's not good enough. You still have to QA and test and ensure that everything works the way it should. But code review in of itself is a layer of security. It helps ensure quality code. And in an ideal environment, when you have a large organization, code reviewers should specialize, with each one looking at different areas of an app. Ideally, one person will take a closer look at the database and your data a little more closely than every other people will. And that's important because not every developer is an expert in the world of data. Not every database expert is expert in code. And so it's important that when people are writing code in either other world, that somebody checks it who does understand better. Because no one knows everything perfectly, and that's kind of how code review can help catch problems. So consider it a layer of security that helps us. And if you're not doing it, consider doing it. It's a really easy way, it's not time consuming, and it can very much help improve improve the chances of bad code being avoided. Another fun one is encryption. How do we handle our personal sensitive data? How do we send data over the internet? How do we store data? How do we store backups? Things like that. And the answer really is, for a lot of that, encryption. Unless your data is truly open source, you don't care if the world sees it, which not a lot of organizations feel that way. Data is property, it's important, it's proprietary, it's useful, we care about it. Therefore, if you have sensitive data, encrypt it at rest. That way, if somebody gets into your database somehow, they can't look at it. They don't have the right, they don't have the certificates, they don't have the keys, they can't get into it. There's a lot of sensitive data out there, and it depends on what kind of system you have. It's possible all the data you have is sensitive with the medical system or a government system or something like that, or crime data. But even if it's not, you may still have credit card numbers, names, addresses, information from minors, account numbers, all kinds of things end up in your system you don't realize end up in there. Make sure that if it is sensitive, you identify it as sensitive, encrypt it at rest. And then, when you send data over the internet, make sure you use an appropriate secure protocol, HTTPS, SSL, TLS, whatever you need to ensure the data in transit is secure. That's really important. Data at rest should be secure, data in transit should be secure, and don't forget your backups. Again, backups are one of those forgotten things, HADR, we forget about it. It's the triad of forgotten things. Your backups are really important. You want them, you tested them, you did all that great work on them, now encrypt them if you need to. You don't have to encrypt them when you're backing them up, but at least encrypt them at some point so when they're at rest and sitting somewhere, they can't be taken and used for nefarious reasons. This is really important. If your backups aren't secure, then none of your data is secure either. It's like just leaving your database open to the world. It's there. People can take it and steal it and do whatever they want with it. And a lot of organizations have lost data in breaches because of backups or backup operator permissions being stolen, producing backups, then stealing the backups. And then, in the same way that we test our backups to make sure they work correctly, make sure your encryption keys are stored in a secure place and test them every so often. Make sure you can encrypt and decrypt your data yourself, that if you ever need to do it for any reason, manually or through an automated process, that it works. Last thing you ever want to do is need to dive into a backup and find out you can't break the encryption for some reason, because reasons. Test everything. Anything you do, you should be able to undo as needed, because it's your data. And beyond testing your backups and testing your encryption, test your security in general. Put it through the ringer. If you don't know how to do that, or you don't have the resources to do it, there are third-party security firms that are great at this. You can audit your hardware, software, and your processes. There are many ways to audit. SOC audits are very common. There are lots of ways that you can check and validate the organization, your data, your servers, your software, and your processes are running efficiently and securely. And if they aren't, you can get feedback to tell you, here's where you need to improve. It's really not a difficult thing to do. There are lots of organizations more than happy to pen test your app and find out, are there vulnerabilities, and if there are, give them to you. I would much rather that somebody helping me gives me the vulnerability information so I can fix it than have it be the bad guys who find it. And if you can or want to, there can be benefits in giving incentives out to employees who find vulnerabilities as well. This is something that when you find a vulnerability and patch it, you're more secure, whether you find it internally or some other organization finds it for you. It's important to test. Anything you do needs to get tested. Just like how software gets QA'd, your security should get tested. And if you don't do this enough, things will get through. It's the nature of software development. You can't find every bug. That's life. Therefore, testing security periodically, every 6 months, every year, however often is the appropriate cadence, will help ensure that if you did miss anything, you catch it. And if you didn't miss anything, you'll feel really good about yourself, and that's worth celebrating. So to kind of wrap this all up, security is a huge topic. It's big, it's a mountainous challenge. There is no one way to fix it, and I could go on forever on this topic. There is no end to what we can talk about in security. The goal of this was really to show that it's a multidimensional challenge, that there are many ways to approach it, and the only best way to approach security in a way that will actually help you and your data remain secure, safe, and unstolen is to have a layered approach. At every single layer of your organization, from the application to the web to the data to the employees, to testing, to backups, to HA, to DR, to performance, and everything else, you need all those layers. Everything right up to the form that I'm filling out in the web and hitting enter on, every single one of those things is a layer. And that layer is yours to secure or yours to leave open. The more layers you have, the less likely it is for someone to get through all of them. And so never assume that because you have security in one place you're good, or even in two places that you're good. You need to know that you have as many layers as possible to ensure that people can't get in, or if they somehow do manage to get past a layer, you'll find out about it before it's too late. Therefore, all your data, which is kind of in the middle, at the end of the day, your data is here. It's in the middle of this onion, and your data is the center of it. All those layers protect it. And in all of that, in all the layers you have, your users, the human beings, the manual processes, those are the places you're going to have the most potential for problems, the biggest weaknesses, and the chances for errors to occur. So therefore, you can train people, and that might help a little. It may decrease click rates, but getting people to be perfect is very, very hard. So assume yours is the weak point. Assume they're going to be the weak point, and then work around them. Have the principle of least privilege. Ensure they can't get to more than they should. Ensure you have 2FA. Ensure you have good, long, nice passwords that are hard to crack, that are easy to remember, but hard to crack, and so on and so forth. Know that no matter how good we are users, we're humans, humans are fallible, and we have to work around that. And if we assume otherwise, we will get burned. And the last and most important thing to mention is to not be complacent. And it's easy to get complacent. We all say we're not complacent. Nobody admits to being lazy. It's one of the things. And we're all hard workers, right? We never are lazy. But organizations do get complacent, especially when nothing bad happens. When they go months, years without a security incident, it's easy to not spend more money on security or hire more people. But organizations generally get bigger, not smaller. Data gets bigger, not smaller, and therefore not increasing security expenditures and efforts over time as your data and everything else gets bigger ensures an eventual failure. And that's the complacency piece. So don't be complacent. Never assume you're safe. Never assume you've done good enough. There is no good enough. There's only doing more and more, and then always checking yourself. And if you check yourself and everything looks great, awesome. Have a drink, celebrate. If it doesn't, you've solved a great problem. So there's no questions you can ask here. It's recorded. That's the nature of the session. But feel free to contact me. I will share this with the world, the slide deck. Feel free to find me and ask questions and connect. I have lots more content out there on this and other topics. Feel free to look it up. And once again, thank you very much for having me at Cyber Back to School. And I hope to see you again soon at other events.